So Al Pacino and Ellen Barkin star in the steamy New York City cop thriller that marked a very desperately needed upswing in the career of Al Pacino. So let's get into all the mystery and hot passion. Sea of Love. NYPD detective Frank Keller is divorced, disheveled, and having a bad time coping with a fellow cop who married his ex. He is also on the case of a homicide where a 45 record of the Phil Phillips song Sea of Love was left playing at the scene. Meanwhile, Queens detective Sherman Toohey joins up with Keller, having a case with similar characteristics. The slightest lead comes with cable TV repairman Terry, who claims to have seen a young black kid from the local grocery store running from the scene. However, when Keller revisits one of the crime scenes, he encounters Gina, a woman who answered a personal ad from Keller's victim. Along with matching fingerprints from the killer at both scenes, Toohey's victim also placed a personal ad with a poetic slant. Thus they set up a sting operation using a personal ad of their own and obtain fingerprint evidence as another victim falls. The cavalcade of women the killer must wine and dine are never wholly convinced by his act, but Helen Kruger, a fiery blonde looking for an animal attraction, both cuts him off at the restaurant, but later sparks it off at a grocery store in their neighborhood. After inviting her out for drinks, Keller has her back to his apartment where things wind down a wild road. After seeing a starter pistol in her handbag, Keller panics, believing she's the killer he's been looking for. However, the situation veers off into an erotic encounter that throws his suspicions into doubt. As the relationship unfolds, Frank's web of undercover lies becomes hard to keep straight between his on-edge instincts as a cop and his impassioned emotions about Helen. Coupled with multiple break-in attempts to his apartment and unsettling clues, Keller cannot resolve whether he's sleeping with a killer or not. So Sea of Love saw its North American theatrical debut on September 15, 1989, and went on to gross over $110 million at the box office off of a mere $19 million budget, making it a smash success for Universal Pictures, producer Martin Bregman, director Harold Becker, but more importantly for Al Pacino, who had been a bit on the skids for the last couple of years, hadn't made a film in 4 years, and the last one he made was called Revolution, which didn't go over well at all. It was a critical and commercial bomb, a British-produced film about the American Revolutionary War. It got lambasted. It made no money at the box office. It really put him in a really bad state of affairs. Where, like I said, he just didn't work for the next couple of years. But it was kind of a insistence on a friend of his that kind of pushed him off to the things like, okay, right now you're not A-list anymore. You've hit the skids. You're in a bad situation with a career. Look at this film. Look it over. See what you can really do with it. Encourage him to go off and deal with that whole thing. And that was Diane Keaton. And the thing was, in the 80s, he didn't do a lot of films because almost half the decade he wasn't doing anything, but the stuff he did before this, you got Cruising from William Friedkin, which is a highly controversial film that didn't make a whole lot of money. It got a smaller type of film called Author, which didn't do a whole lot of business. Scarface, very well received type of film, especially in retrospect, did make a fair amount of profit, especially when you get in all the cable and home video sales and rentals, stuff like that. But it was a bit of a rocky time for him in the entire decade here, but this film hit a really strong commercial vibe for him. It was something that could really tap into something that was very contemporary, very much accessible, very much an adult-themed oriented thriller that could very much attach itself to an audience and get very much up on the thrilling aspects, the kind of more erotic type of things going on in the entire film, with two stars that sparked off amazing chemistry in the entire film. And director Harold Becker was not like a major filmmaker in any type of way. He did some decent films, good solid type of things such as Vision Quest. He did The Boost. Later on got to do Malice and Mercury Rising and Domestic Disturbance. So decent films here and there and stuff like that. But at least a solid hand enough to get him into a project here that, with producer Martin Bregman, who had worked with Pacino on Serpico and Scarface, a couple other things here and there, really kind of shepherd that thing forward to get in the hands of Pacino from a fantastic screenwriter in Richard Price, who's also a novelist. Just came off with The Color of Money, which was Oscar nominated with Martin Scorsese. Later go out and co-write the entire film Ransom for Ron Howard. Really solid piece of work there. So some very strong, reliable talent involved, the entire makeup, the entire film here. And it was kind of sort of based on Richard Price's novel, The Ladies' Man. It's kind of not really directly based on it because it's not credited that way, but he said he wanted to explore the same sort of ideas he had in that novel he wrote, but kind of like change up a bunch of different things, make more of a more exciting protagonist, make him a cop with a gun and a badge and stuff like that. And certain things here that are similar in tone and whatnot, similar in theme, but still move it off to something that feels like much more of a exciting theatrical type of thing with a crime and a killer and stuff like that. So kind of dealing with sort of the love-lorn stuff going on in the entire thing, but it just moves off in different directions here. But anyway, in that regard, so you got a solid screenwriter, reliable director, and a fantastic actor who needs something very strong, something commercial to launch him back up into the major star power of Hollywood and get himself going here. So it's like there's a few complications in terms of the production here because they're trying to shoot everything up in Toronto, but they found out that really visually, exterior wise, you can't make Toronto look like New York City. Despite some other filmmakers have tried, Becker was like, we really can't do that. But they shot all like the interior stuff, all the stuff on soundstage, anything they get away with up there on a soundstage, they got done in Toronto to get things a little bit cheaper on the production budget. But on the streets, it had to be New York. There's no way you could replicate that vibe anywhere except within Manhattan itself. So you can definitely see that in the entire film. New York, in that slightly before they gentrified everything, cleaned everything up, right in the opening credits, you see all the stuff with the hookers and the sleazy establishments up and down the avenues. It's right in that kind of grimy, sleazy type of kind of shadowy, dirty sort of New York that you had up at that point. You had through like the 70s and through the 80s, stuff like that. Getting the last pieces here right before everything just got cleaned up and washed away and made it much more of a safe place, but visually a little bit less of an interesting place in that regard for cinematic visuals. But this really got right in that point in time. It really aids into the opening of the entire film with the great score, with the saxophones and the sexiness on that regard, and just kind of weave you into this sort of steamy sort of atmosphere the film's going for with a little bit of a lethal edge to it as well. So everything came out very well, and just making sure that you could get the vibes of New York into the film because it's so much of a character. When you have the right director, knows exactly what New York can offer, they make it just a living, breathing atmosphere through the entire film, and this very much comes off in that regard. But they're shooting the film about 4 to 5 months, and there's a lot of long night shoots on the whole thing, so it's a little bit of a bit of a grind getting through the whole thing. And there's been a few things said from Ellen Barkin in various interviews throughout the years where she's had recollections of this entire production here that are not very favorable. She did not like working with director Harold Becker because there were certain incidents that were very toxic, and how he treated her in certain sex scenes and various other things that just felt very much like there were very, very just volatile type of things happening to her, despite the fact that she said Pacino was a professional. He was such a gracious type of guy. A little shy in sort of the sex scenes and stuff like that, where at the time she felt she was much more comfortable with the stuff than she is now. So there's a little bit of a odd parody in that regard, but I think between the two of them, they kind of helped each other through maybe a bit disproportionate struggles in the entire film, but she did have a bit of a negative reaction to some things, especially when she's looking at certain things that a lot of the audience looks at very steamy and just very, very arousing type of things. She sees them in a very different light because she was tense, or she felt very uncomfortable in certain situations. So a lot of times when you're watching all these kind of bodies writhing around and having all this sensual stuff happening in the film, usually it's not quite as comfortable or arousing for the actors themselves. Sometimes they're very uncomfortable, but I know that type of feeling. I've always, in my own films, when I've had those certain situations where there's going to be like a woman in peril and sort of very awkward, scary situations, I make sure that the actors are very much comfortable working with one another and working with me and set up boundaries and parameters, exactly what we're going to do here, so everyone feels comfortable and everyone can say no to anything they want to whenever anything comes up that's very much against what they want to do on the films. But giving credit to Becker for his skills as director, I think it does infuse the film with a very strong, honest, straight sense of New York City personality. Just like he understands that energy in the entire city, or everything that's kind of flowing through behind the scenes of everything that's happening in the entire film. He gets that vibe. He gets it so much. He wants to tap into that just has it as that background character so much in the film. There's so many little things in the entire film that does grab that sort of vibe so much in the entire film. Just like this really nice, just wonderful scene later on in the film, just like the last scene in the whole film, when you've got Pacino's character and Barkin's character kind of walking down the street, and Pacino gets hit, just knocked over by this one guy randomly on the street, and Pacino just is right on top of the entire scene, just doesn't break character 1 second, and it just flows through the entire scene. It's like, it's so New York City, the whole thing. Just people bumping into each other, not minding one another. It wasn't just in their own zone or whatnot, and everything just happens around you and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a certain vibe that you can't really manufacture. You have to kind of grab it right there in the moment on the streets of New York City. So it's like, he really does grab that. And with the cinematography from Ronnie Taylor, who was a winner of the Academy Award for Gandhi alongside Billy Williams, this guy's got some good stuff. It's not the most stylish thriller you could find. They're certainly not going for a high-end sort of deep shadows sort of type of thing, but there's a subtlety to what he's doing in certain situations where you can grab a little kind of mood here and there, stuff like that. He's not splashing things around too harshly or anything too crazy or whatnot, but you can just see the subtlety in what he's doing, moving the camera around, getting certain things in certain contexts that has a certain impact on the audience that I think does aid to the entire atmosphere of the entire film here. I think visually the film is very strong. I think it's a very strong film in that regard, just grabbing a grounded sensibility of what you're doing with these characters in these situations and just having a good gritty sense about everything in general. So I think how the direction comes along, plus his cinematography, really crafts something that does feel accessible and relatable. It feels real to yourself. Watching these characters in these situations in a real setting, everything comes off very much genuine. Everything feels greatly authentic to the vibes of New York and all the characters that inhabit the whole thing. I love everything going on. Everyone clicks into that vibe throughout the entire film. Everyone in the cast is so locked into that entire thing. You can feel ebbing and flowing between everyone. Everyone you have is the cops. There's some great character actors, the whole thing. I love Larry Joshua. He's a really good New York character actor. He was in Shakedown with Peter Weller and Sam Elliott. He was in a couple episodes, I think, of A Law and Order. He was also show up in Miami Vice. Really good, charismatic, fresh energy type of actor. Always brings some fantastic things to a role. Got Gene Canfield here as an actual NYPD officer, kind of transitioning into acting a little bit. And Harold Becker was kind of like wanting to get a few actual cops on the film to be consultants, get down the procedures of the cops, how they would look, how they would dress, how they would carry themselves, all the little details to make sure everything felt very authentic. Plus, Paul Calderone is a fantastic, charismatic character actor. You've seen him in a million damn things, and he's always great in everything he does. Stepping off of that a little bit, you got Samuel L. Jackson showing up here. Just the little thing in the opening in the entire film where they're doing the sort of Meet the Yankees NYPD sting operation. It's like Jackson's got the charisma right off the bat and stuff like that. He stands out as his bit player in the entire film. Great type of stuff. And apparently that was an actual sting operation the NYPD did pull at certain points in time. Kind of send out all these sort of like Meet the Yankees invitations, all these guys they have warrants for. So they all just show up in this entire freaking scenario or whatnot, and they just could just cuff them and arraign them and stuff like that. No problem whatsoever. So, but I'm not saying they did too often, but they did at least one time, according to Harold Becker or whatnot. But some great actors, and of course, you got to talk about just the fact of the matter is, Pacino's got all the juice in this entire film, just completely. All the great things you want from Pacino. He's such a method actor. He gets so much into the character. He knows the character inside and out through every piece of his skin. You know exactly how he's living this character in the moment here. Knows exactly all the things that are weighing on this character. I like the fact that Frank Keller is this character who's just, he's a little bit on that noirish side, a little bit on the hard-boiled noirish side. He's been hitting hard times. He's kicked to the curb. He's got a divorce that's already happened, and the wife married someone else in the department, and he's kind of sloshed out at the beginning of the film, calling her at like 3 a.m. or some other nonsense. It's just a great character that just has everything hanging on him all throughout the entire film. All these different things, you just see that the weariness, the world-worn qualities of what he's gone through. Just he's been run through the ringer, and he's ground through the dirt and stuff like that, and he's been on the force for 20 years, and just he's seen everything there is to see, but he's not giving up the job, but he's not really going anywhere else in his entire life. So he's just in this situation where you can see it when they go on later on with him and Goodman's character of Detective Toohey. They're trying to do the entire sting operation here with the ladies that they put the personal ads out for. He's not really clicking with anyone. He's trying to hop skip and whatnot between all these different made-up sort of scenarios for this character he's kind of concocted for this entire operation here. But like every single lady kind of sits down with, they kind of see something awry with him. He's not entirely keeping up with everything. He's not quite the social, well-oiled machine he could possibly be. So you can see that a guy like Al Pacino could do that in a situation, but the fact is the character of Frank Keller isn't that guy. And he really can't keep up with these ladies and keep the facade going too well. And it's not until he gets up to Helen that she's kind of working him all over and stuff like that. And he's like captivated by her to a certain degree, but she's just like not infatuated with this guy whatsoever. There's so much of a magneticism about what Ellen Barkin brings to the entire role that she just attracts the attention of the audience. Frank Keller, all these different things. So it's like this magnetic sort of thing with all this electricity sparking off everywhere. You can't help but be attracted to this woman and her personality and the fire she has in the entire thing. So I like how this entire thing just kind of twists and moves the character around, where he's a sharp cop, but he has this soft spot for this sort of love-lorn, lonely hearts type of quality that he has inside of him. So this guy, where there's actually some interesting deleted scenes, not the ones that are on the DVD and the Blu-ray, but the ones that are done for the TV version that you can actually find on the Universal Thrillers VHS release, where they actually have Lorraine Bracco portraying his ex-wife, and they have a few scenes with her. And I personally like watching these scenes that add more character to him, a little bit more context to him and stuff like that. It's like he doesn't exactly know where he wants to be in his life, but where he is right now is not anywhere good. And they're having this kind of sort of like conversation, and it's being a bit combative and argumentative and stuff like that. There's these minor things in his life that he used to have that he just wants to connect with again. So I like these scenes that they had with her. So she got completely cut out of the theatrical version of the film, but it shows all these little things hanging on the character here that shows that depth and that sort of uncertainty he has for the entire film here, dealing with Helen, where it's like, yeah, he's attracted to her. He's so enraptured by her and stuff like that, but there's that cop thing ticking around the back of his head. It's like he's got to follow through on certain things. Like when he first gets the fingerprints on the glass in his apartment, thinks about it, then he kind of goes back on it and stuff like that. He's thinking back and forth about the entire thing, and he keeps going back and forth about it all the way. It's like, eventually does get her social security card, and he's kind of looking up, seeing she has a criminal record and stuff like that. There's things like he's constantly batting back and forth. He doesn't know which way to go with it because he's so taken with this woman, and not so much just a lust type of thing. There's so many different complexities what Ellen Barkin brings to that character that gives her a grounded sensibility, something that has a certain tether and dimensionality to her. So it's this very complex type of thing that Al Pacino's characters have to go through the entire film, and never being entirely certain exactly where to land on this idea between the woman and the investigation. I love that entire quality. It just creates all that great conflict that Pacino knows exactly every nuance, every way to carry himself in the scene to show how that's being weighed upon himself. I love seeing how the worn qualities of the character keep tearing apart at him, and as the film goes on, he's never sure exactly which way to land on everything like that. So I love that the story just kind of keeps him jumping from one thing to another and not landing anything. And he kind of almost has to convince his own cop friends and stuff like that, his own colleagues, exactly what the hell's going on in his life and stuff like that. So Pacino's doing fantastic work in this film. He's just A+ the entire way through it. I think he's just crushing it the entire film, and everything that has going on, like I said, with Ellen Barkin, just the chemistry these two have is just electric. The two of them are just so hot on screen. Just like there are certain scenes in the entire film that definitely just highlight what these two characters, these two actors can zap between their eyes and stuff like that. You can just see that stuff hitting off so much, regardless of what's actually happening with the actors in certain sequences are a little bit more sensual and stuff like that. Like I said earlier, on screen, in the camera, it's firing off on such blazing hot ways that they do so many good things. But the fact of the matter is, she starts out the entire film just with sizzle. Once she shows up, after you've seen the couple other ladies have shown up to this entire personal ad sting type of thing, she shows up and it's like she's completely different from all of them. Just everything, the way she's got her hair styled, the red jacket, everything she's got going on. She knows exactly how to work the charisma, the everything going on, the whole thing. she's got a physicality about herself that just comes alive on screen so much. Every time she's on screen, this film just absolutely loves her. And just the fact that she has this additional tether. She's got the entire thing with the ex-husband, which is a plot point, but also she has the daughter. And she's also got her mother and stuff like that in the apartment here and there and everywhere. But it creates a bit of a more grounded sensibility, like I said, about the character. It's not just this one lone woman that's a mystery to everyone. She has a certain thing that brings a certain context or a well-rounded, filled-out world that helps to bring everything into doubt, whether or not she is the killer they're looking for. Like, it's this woman who has this great kid that she loves, and this mother that helps her out and stuff like that. Is she really this femme fatale, stalker, killer character and stuff like that? Those elements, periphery to the entire story, add that sort of flavor to the entire thing, and creates a complexity about the character that does throw those things into question. So if she was just a complete mystery character, you're just trying to decipher as the film goes along. She's all covered in mystique. That's a little bit more traditional in that regard, but they're trying to play things in a different way, whereas you're never entirely certain one way or another. There's certain hints here and there, but it's the fact that Keller's character is like he's got half-truths, and he's got misconceptions, he's got certain other things here and there. There are clues that are leading him towards certain things, but he doesn't know the entire story. He's kind of jumping to conclusions while really kind of investigating quite as thoroughly as he could, because he's not trying to break off this relationship so much with her. He's conflicted by all his emotions inside, so it's all these interesting little things that creates the complex web the entire film is running these characters through. So I think the two of them are just completely great in the entire film, playing every single beat with one another excellently. You can't find a missed note between them. They're just absolutely positively 100% great in the entire film. And got John Goodman. Wasn't as well known. He was just kind of a little bit starting out on Roseanne. But I knew, watching that sitcom as a kid and stuff like that, this guy was an incredible actor. You could see it when they gave him certain dramatic things to play in the series. The guy crushed it every single time, and he's been proven to be one of the best ones out there. Just the guy just delivers 100% of the time. And Harold Becker had seen him in a couple things. I think Bregman has seen him in a couple of things as well in theater and stuff like that. So he knew that he was already great. Brought him into this whole thing. He gels so well with Pacino. Adding a little New York accent on this whole thing as Detective Toohey. When he starts doing the singing and dancing stuff, like that's complete John Goodman stuff. You know that inside and out. That's signature stuff for him. And he's fantastic. I absolutely love him. Throw him in anything. He's 100% perfect every single time. He's an incredible actor. Perfect type of stuff in that regard. Then you got Michael Rooker. Guy, man. This guy just shot up like a star. This guy worked like hell. Everyone knew him. He got so much work off of what he did on Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Got him this job. Got him up until stuff like Cliffhanger, and he built up towards Walking Dead, and he's worked in Guardians of the Galaxy. The guy just works, and apparently he's such a great, nice, wonderful guy to work with. Perfect, great type of guy. It's like they want someone a little less known and whatnot to play this sort of smaller role in the entire film as Terry here. And of course, the whole thing where he gets revealed as being the ex-husband of Helen, and of course ends up being the killer by the end of the film. There was a critic or two at the time this was released that felt like it was a little out of left field. He only has an introduction scene, then a follow-up scene where he's talking about the entire black kid he saw kind of running out as a thief or whatnot, and kind of follow up this whole thing at the grocery store. And there's a deleted scene that kind of follows up and kind of ties it off at the end of the entire thing. But the fact is, he's kind of absent for a very long stretch of time, and there's not enough integration of his character into the rest of the story, and there's not enough things like throw enough shade on him to be kind of suspicious, or kind of lay enough clues to kind of have the audience kind of slowly piece the things together. Just kind of like he just shows up at the entire end of the film. Even though you had two setup scenes where like someone's trying to break into Keller's apartment, you don't really have enough of a setup that it is Terry or anything like that. He just kind of shows up at the end of the film, and it all does make sense, all links together by the end of the thing when you understand what's going on. But as a mystery type of thing, trying to figure who the killer is and trying to play the things off, dance back and forth about whether or not Helen is the killer or something else like that, would have been nice to kind of like do a little bit more sprinkles of certain things to kind of like integrate the idea of Terry being the ex-husband and the father of her daughter and stuff like that. So maybe a little missed opportunity. The fact that Rooker does a fantastic job with everything he does. He's great at the end of the film, great in his two other scenes. He's great. Just the integration of the character probably could have used a little something extra, but the cast in this thing is just excellent. Everyone is such a great actor. Everyone's seen these people in a bunch of different films, and they're all really fantastic type of things. I like, you got stuff with the story here, where everything just comes back around, a great setup payoff type of things. I like the thing when Keller puts the NYPD shooting trophy underneath his bed after he's had sex with Helen and stuff like that, realizes that could jeopardize his cover, and he didn't realize it beforehand. Trophy's still in the bed when Terry shows up and he has to clock him over the head, stuff like that. Very good. Nice sort of thing on that regard. I also liked the entire thing with Gina, who was supposed to be this another caller from another one of the personal ads for one of the guys who got killed at the beginning of the film, and she shows up at the apartment and talks with Keller about certain things, and that's where he gets the lead towards the personal ads to get the entire sting rolling and stuff like that. But then she shows up answering another one of the personal ads, where it's Goodman's character of Tui, and she recognizes Keller and stuff like that, and it weaves into Tui having a little bit of an affair with her and stuff like that, and just heat of passion. Just nice organic things in the story that kind of sets things up and doesn't waste anything. Everything gets set up, gets followed up on later on, and you have that integration of stuff like that. So it's not like little things kind of introduced but forgotten later on. It's like it's nice, rewarding the audience moments that they paid attention, they're invested in certain things, you showed them certain stuff, and you gave it a certain purpose later on in the story to just have a payoff. So I like that quality of screenwriting. So Richard Price, really good writer on that regard. I mean, Ransom's fantastic. Color of Money, I'm a little off on that. It's not the best work from Scorsese or Paul Newman, but they got a lot of acclaim for it and stuff like that. So anything in that regard, but great writing to most of the greatest. Felt like the killer aspect could have been just the ex-husband aspect. It feels like it should have been more rewarding to find out who it was at the end of the film instead of just having kind of like charge into the entire scene and just kind of like realize it in the moment. So like certain things in that regard, but it's still a great sequence at the end of the film when they're battling and doing stuff like that. I like the fact that he gets knocked out the window. It was like, he's got to get knocked out the window. He definitely has to. That's the big point of the set piece here. He's got to get knocked out the damn window and die that way. And they did that. It's very good. Very, very rewarding in that regard. Something else very rewarding I find in the whole thing is the score from Trevor Jones. This guy would end up going off and doing Last Mohicans and a whole bunch of other really fantastic scores all over the place. A very diverse type of stuff he's done. It was released on CD and probably a few other formats, but I don't think it's anywhere available digitally at this point in time, but I think he did a really fine job. Becker had heard his work before, and he really wanted someone who had personality for the city. That kind of sort of sensual saxophone, sort of lonely heart sort of vibe to the entire film. You definitely get that sense when you got the images and the music working together. You definitely get that overall sensibility of what he wants to convey to the audience, that it can be a lonely city, and deal with all these themes overall that integrate with the music and stuff like that. When he has much more propulsive type of things going on in the entire score, it does translate very well to making things tense and suspenseful in certain places. So I think Trevor Jones did a wonderful job in this whole thing. Just very, very, very much on that great sort of jazzy type of saxophone type of stuff that's just perfect for this entire genre of film. The story in the entire film, I think like I said, I think the strong suit is Barkin and Pacino here, what they're going through. Those emotional hurdles and the stumbling points and stuff like that. I like the fact that I like this entire scene where Pacino's character goes off to where she works. She's a manager of like an upscale shoe store, and the whole thing where these two guys come in with these kind of attitudes and stuff like that, and they kind of spot him as a cop. Some way, how, whatnot, and the thing gets revealed to her. She didn't know. For all this time, Pacino's story was that he was owning his own printing company, and that gets let out of the bag, and there's an entire sequence there where he's kind of have to combat with the entire thing, and later on, he let slip that the original meeting was part of a police sting, and he hadn't revealed that to her, and he's got to kind of dance around this entire thing where he's just like, he's all complicated in that regard. So I like the fact that these conflicts, all these different things between the two characters, whether they're hot and steamy, or they're argumentative, or there's just certain things that are falling out between them, there's always that energy between the two actors. There's so many things going on in that regard that makes the film compelling on that end, where you are kind of losing a little bit of the suspense there from, because you're trying to maintain this other thing is she or isn't she? You're not going to have these sort of sequences where, like, there's another kill or whatnot that happens randomly in town when there's no real setup for that, when the entire story is centered around between the two characters here in this relationship. It's a little hard to kind of keep the entire suspenseful killer plot going forward, throws off the entire suspicion or whatnot. So it's a tough type of thing because it kind of loses that suspenseful, tension-filled sort of propulsiveness that the film has at certain points early on in the film, certainly at the very end or whatnot. So it's all built up with all that, the sexiness and the stuff that are kind of going off and where things kind of imploding and backfiring and trying to reconnect and trying to go off in certain ways. I like the fact that when Keller sees that the starter pistol in her freaking bag when she goes into the bathroom, he's just freaking out and grabbing his gun. He doesn't know what to do, and he assaults her and stuff like that, and everything goes off in certain ways. And it happens again later on in the entire film when she brings over the 45 and she starts playing the Sea of Love thing, and he just whacks out in that entire thing and he just jumps to the whitest conclusion he possibly can. Obviously ends up being false and whatnot, but it's like I like that the character is so kind of in a volatile emotional state where he's kind of backed between two different things, being the cop and being in love with this woman. It's like he can't kind of resolve the two of them to coexist in that regard. So it's like it's such a great character conflict that even if the kind of like killer thriller aspects are not as regularly present, the performances are so goddamn good in this entire film that just propels the story forward. So you're invested with those characters because they're so electric on screen. So much good stuff going on, and the fact that when Rooker's character becomes the killer and all that stuff goes on, the entire resolution by the end of the film where Pacino's off in another precinct and stuff like that here and there and everywhere, and everything's been kind of resolved, but he's got to have that one last try or whatnot. It's like he can't stop thinking about this woman. He really can't exist without her and stuff like that. So it's like I like this entire like complete transparency about this character that even Goodman's character can see through it. That, man, you're infatuated still. 7 weeks on, you just can't get her out of your head, and you have no choice whatsoever but to go track her down once again and just give everything you possibly can in 5 different ways this Sunday, trying to figure out exactly how the hell to win her back and stuff like that. And then I like the fact that the film ends in such a way where they do kind of able to wash the complicated mess of everything that's gone down between them and just reconnect on such a really good level here. The performances are what you're coming for, definitely 100% in this whole thing. I can't say much more about it. They are exceptionally good. And you can see exactly this sparks Pacino off so much with critical acclaim, so much Oscar nominations, Academy Award nominated films, critically just praised films for ever and ever in that regard. So such an essential film for Pacino to get back up out of star power, get him back exactly where we know he needs to be and where he deserves to be. So I like the fact that this film really hit that pulse, hit it at the right time, because you don't get these films anymore. This type of film or whatnot, like a sensual mystique cop thriller in such a way, it just doesn't happen anymore. These are nice. Stuff like this is very nice. There's another one from Ridley Scott he did shortly before this called Someone to Watch Over Me, which I do need to revisit. Tom Berenger, Mimi Rogers, Andreas Katsoulis. It's a gorgeous film. Check it out. I'll probably cover it at some point in time in the future, but similar sort of romanticized cop thriller in New York City or whatnot, I think is really, really worth your time as well. So guys, let me know what you think about Sea of Love, if you really think Pacino nailed the hell out of it in this thing and really resurrected his career so very well. And thanks so much. Comments, like, subscribe, sharing the links around. It very much helps the channel expand so very well. Feeds the algorithm, makes things very much good on that regard. And of course, turning on the notifications on your mobile device to get the notifications there whenever you subscribe and hit that notification bell on the channel. And all the other things with Super Thanks feature and the Patreon helps out to support the channel and continues to let us do all these great things for you guys. So guys, thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.